Hello, YouTube, for the replay. How are y'all doing this evening? I was on time. I tried to be prompt. I hope everyone is doing well. It's definitely nice. Hey, sweetheart. I can't even read what I'm doing here. Roblox killer. That's who that is. Oh, how are you, sweetie? Ooh. Hey, I saw that you were under attack. Jeepers, this is getting to be too stressful to be a game. How are you doing today, Auntie? We attacked. Sorry, I understand. Hi, Katrina. I'm doing wonderful today. How are you, love? I hope you're doing well for a Monday. It's been a quiet one, though. It snowed here. I've been praying for snow for the longest. And it finally came, and it was real quiet. So I was able to get a lot done. Not as much as I would have liked to, but I got enough done. Oh, goodness. Okay. Had to reboot my MacBook. Hi, Solomon. Okay, go ahead and pick your nose, all you'd like. I've seen worse. I'm doing wonderful. I love the fit as always. Thank you, hun. Thank you. Hey, Keisha. How you doing, love? Solomon is picking his nose, so we're going to give him his privacy. I saw the most disgusting thing earlier. Hi, Nubia. Good, I'm good. I'm good. Here and accounted for. I scanned through some live streams earlier just to look. And hey, Photon. And there was this one content creator that was collabing with another. I don't have anything specific. I was going to actually leave it to you guys as to what you guys want to talk about. I'm giving the members an opportunity to decide what to do. I just pulled out the butter knife because I'm spreading love to Oreos. As long as you ain't spreading what you dug out of your nose. Hey, nephew. Hi, niece. How you doing, honey? Hi, Iris. My glasses are kind of cloudy. Please forgive me. Pierre, how are you, my love? How you been? I got members in the house tonight. I'm going to leave it up to the members tonight as to what we talk about. Because this is your house, too. I'll give everybody time to come on in. What I pulled out of my nose is to add some salty flavor to my sandwich. Ugh, Ooh, okay. Michiko. The book about the black lady that Pakistan. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't catch that. The book about the black lady that went to Pakistan to get married and didn't get married. Your video. That was a trip, though. You guys want to talk about that tonight? That's just something I stumbled across this morning and I was floored. I was floored by it all. The attitude and the arrogance. I'm like, yeah, girlfriend is, whoo, bad couple of days, Auntie, missed the live. Sorry about that. I'm sorry too, but honey, I'm glad you made it tonight. I'm glad you made it. It's good to see you again, although I can't see you physically. I know you're here in spirit. Let me adjust this pillow. Ooh, that's better. I don't know what it is about my big ass that makes this pillow slide down. Oh, there's them Tyler teeth again. I hope y'all represented me in Roblox today. Anytime, Pierre. Anytime. Love you, sweetheart. I understand life be life, and who you calling a white girl? Who you calling a white girl? So hey, don't start nothing, won't be nothing. Oh goodness. Well, it lets me know you've been looking. Lets me know, Solomon. You gotta read that book. Or listen. You don't even have to read. Just listen. Let me read to you. Hey, Auntie, my bad. I got distracted on Roblox. Oh, that's so... Sweetheart, I totally understand. You were under attack. You were definitely under attack. Them crazy people breaking into that house like that. You should read to us right now, Auntie. Fronting Spill the Beans. What should I read tonight? What, read from the book? That's why I made the videos. So I wouldn't have to read it again. I can read, though, if you want me to. Okay. Okay, so let me put it out there then. Since we've got one person that is already, is a snippet so people could run in. Right. Well, that's why I did that highlight today. That was a highlight from chapter 1. It just gives the people a little bit of a piece to encourage them to go listen to the whole playlist. But if you want, I know you watched it, but everybody else hasn't. So if you want me to read chapter 1, I'll do that. Put a 1 in the chat if y'all want me to read chapter 1 of the book. And I'll do that. Because this is y'all's night. Y'all decide what you want to talk about, what you want to do. Okay, I got 1. Hi, Steph. Got 2. I got 2 1s so far. 2 if you don't want me to. I'll give everybody an opportunity to decide. We got 2 people that want me to read chapter 1 of the book. I'm going to also take other suggestions from other members only, as to, okay, we got 3. So far, looks like the members are speaking. Are you reading your book, Auntie? Yes, just the first chapter. Unless y'all want me to continue after that. So we'll start with chapter 1 first. There's no ads in this tonight. You ain't got to hit the skip button. But you know how I get on touchy subjects, I start. So I better get some Kleenex, huh? I should be okay. Solomon, where is my DeAndre? I have not been able to find DeAndre. I looked for him in your live the other night, and I did not find him. I'm about to be 27. I'm very skinny. Is it too late to start working out? Absolutely not, Jose. It's never too late. Never too late. And it's a good thing you're thinking about that. Some people just give up. So, no, it's never too late. You're very young. You still have a chance at it. You are so welcome, Jose. Where are you from, Jose? Jose Tavares. One of my favorite singing groups coming up. You still can do it. Yep. Africa. Well, welcome to the chat, Jose. Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I miss my DeAndre. I haven't talked to him in a while. Cabo Verde. Well, welcome to the chat, Jose. Oh, stop. Don't pay him no Jose, don't pay attention to Solomon. He's a jokester. He's a mess. Solomon is a mess, Jose. Solomon, don't you start. Oh my goodness. Jose said, I got you, man. I get you. Well, it looks like I'm going to be reading the book. Um, Hold on just a second. Let me go get it. Okay. Okay, we got 24 people in here. That's wonderful. And it's so early. Oh. Should I read the dedication too? That's in the video. I can skip the dedication. Every time I come across someone from Cabo Verde, I start rattling off in Spanish. I think I'm facing it. Read the dedication too, Amy. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Keisha. I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, let me scoot up here. Okay, so as you all know, especially you, Solomon. Thank you, my love. The name of the book is Who You Calling a White Girl? by me. Dedicate my love. Okay, so okay, I'll start out with the dedication. Dedicated to God first. To my grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. William A. Jones Sr. Without them, Lord knows where I would have been. To my father, Tony, and my mother, Evelyn. Hi to everyone that just came in. I'm going to pay attention to the book. I'm not going to look at the chat right now. It was your act of giving me to my grandparents, be it selfish or unselfish, that saved my life. To my sons, Barry and Isaiah, I wouldn't have done it any different if it would have meant not having you. To my sister Marty, we share a common thread that no one else can dismantle. Side note, since the writing of this book, my son Isaiah is deceased, and my sister Marty died a year later. Isaiah passed in 2018. Marty passed in 2019. So this book is definitely dedicated to them as well. Okay, got through that part. To my grandchildren, Elijah, Mackenzie, Xavion, and Kyrie. You've added years to my life, and the joy is multiplied tenfold. To 27th and Spring, where it all started, Mrs. Beatrice Bird, Mrs. Frankie Fisher, and Mrs. Alice Parker, who served as mothers to me when Mama wasn't able. To the Azell and Briscoe families for accepting this mutt as one of your own. And last but not least, to my loving husband, Reverend Barry J. Ray, my love, my soulmate, my rock, my boo, my heartbeat, my everything after God. We raised each other, and we still together. Okay. Now for the prologue. Ouch. Okay. Yeah, good old Seattle, Washington. No, not D.C. The Great Pacific Northwest, or what the old folks from the South used to refer to as up north. Hey, Snapback, how are you, sweetheart? Good to see you. Kick back and relax. I'm reading the book. It was a place where black folks and white folks were more diverse, accepted, on the same page, treated more like equals. Yeah, right. I guess when it came to sleeping around, white folks and black folks was hooking up liberally and openly in the North compared to the South. Good to see you too, sweetheart. Grandpa called it the land of the free and the home of all the free white punani a black man can handle. There was no black or white when the lights went out. And busting that nut. Oh, but the side effects. The side effects were a different story. And that's where I come in. Chapter 1. The Great White Hope. Where'd you get that little white baby from? Even though she was my grandmother on my father's side, I still referred to her as Mama. She always got a big kick out of telling me the story about the old white man, or the old cracker, as she referred to him, standing in front of the Woolworths in front of downtown Seattle. A stark contrast to the customary rain in which Seattle was keenly identified with. This was an unusually hot and humid day in the early 60s, and Mama had once again ventured out on one of her usual shopping trips with me to the local thrift stores downtown. Although she was in her late 50s, her chocolate brown skin was smooth as silk and virtually wrinkle free. She stood 4'10" in height and weighed about 165 pounds. Yes, she was a butterball. Yet she carried herself with a silent confidence that stood 10 feet tall. As she slowly pushed me down the street in my stroller, she passed the old white man who casually peered in, only to find, to his surprise, a little platinum blonde haired, blue eyed girl in the deepest of southern drawls. Not drawls, drawls. He posed this question to her as if she had stole something. Now, first of all, let me say that I'm not telling a story of pity, but a story of triumph and victory. Ironically, at the most exciting time in our United States history, where we as a country have elected a strikingly handsome, intelligent, and refreshingly headstrong young man who just happens to be a biracial like myself and just 1 year older than me, into the most powerful position in the world, the President of the United States. Stop for a moment. When I finished this book, I finished the night the night that he won the election the first time. That's why I'm mentioning it in this book. As I sat there in front of my television, eyes fixated on the festivities that unfolded before me of this energetic young man raised in strikingly similar circumstances as myself, I couldn't help but smile in knowing that we share a little bit more in common than the black perspective. I'm reminded of the old saying that simply states, that which doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. And I damn sure ain't dead yet. That's the triumph. That's the victory. It's no secret that many folks have issues they were born with and have no control over, be it race, creed, color, birth defect, physical or mental abuse. You name it and it exists. However, it's not about the issue, but how you use it to your benefit, if you can. There's also those that can't use it to their benefit, but somehow manage to turn it into the benefit of others. It's about the legacy you leave behind. The most profound victories are born out of the in spite ofs. So, how will you be spoken of when they close that casket over your face for the last time? For as long as I can remember, I've had to explain my ethnicity to people. I worked in a customer service capacity at an international airport for 20 years. So naturally, I came in contact with hundreds of people on a daily basis from different walks of life. It wasn't uncommon to carry on a general conversation with my customers during the course of doing my job. And it was during these innocent times of interaction that some folks just had to satisfy their curiosity. Most black people are able to detect it right away, especially when I open my mouth. That's what Mrs. Bird used to say next door. She said, you know, Mickey may look like a white girl, but until she opens her mouth, she's just as black as the rest of us. But that doesn't always stop them from blurting out that ever so tacky question, what are you? As if I'm anything other than human. If they catch me on a bad day, there isn't much I need to say to give them the answer. That all too familiar sister with an attitude neck jerk that says, oh no you didn't, usually suffices. White folks, on the other hand, don't pick up on it as easy. Hello, Arthur Aguiar. Welcome, sweetheart. Okay, where was I? White folks, on the other hand, don't pick up on it as easy. Most will ask me, are you from Louisiana? Because they're more inclined to think that I'm just a white girl from the South, rather than what the old folks called a high yellow black girl from the North. Many times, especially when I was much younger, I felt it was much easier to just say that I was Creole. It was conveniently warranted less explanation because it conveniently warranted less explanation because everybody knew there were black folks in the South that were just as light as me. Hello, Sally, dear. Pull up a chair. I'm reading my book. Oh, does it surprise you that I referred to myself as black? Don't be shocked. I've always considered myself as black, regardless of how white I look, because culturally, that's all I've ever known. Besides, doesn't society say the same? We've always been taught that as long as you have a drop of black blood in you, you're black, right? It's not as much of an issue today as it was in the past with me, but every now and then, a situation or circumstance rears its head to remind me. It wasn't too long ago that my husband was scheduled to host a program at one of the local churches we fellowshipped with. It was the pastor's wife's annual day, to be specific. Now, anyone who knows anything about the black church etiquette will tell you that when you are on the program to give remarks, you try to limit those remarks to a few minutes. And you definitely keep them in line with the theme of the program. Well, I guess some folks just didn't get that memo. Another local pastor in attendance was scheduled to present uplifting remarks and accolades to the honoree of the program. This gentle looking man with salt and pepper hair and dark brown skin slowly rose to make his way to the pulpit. He cleared his throat to speak, paused briefly as if to contemplate his next move, and surveyed the small congregation. Well, I'm glad to see that some of us are still married to black women. Of course, all eyes immediately turned towards me. Who else could he be talking about in here? Certainly not his own mama, sitting a few rows back, who ironically was damn near as light as me. Now, ain't that a blip? Well, naturally, I got up and walked out. And naturally, a few people in the congregation came out to see if I was okay, apologizing for this man's ignorance for a good 5 minutes or so. Yeah, good old Seattle, Washington. No, not D.C., the great Pacific Northwest. Well, my daddy's full name was William Anthony Jones, Jr., but everyone called him Tony. He enlisted into the Army soon after graduation from high school in the late 50s and eventually wound up stationed in Fort Lewis, Washington. A few years into his service, the military cut him loose for reasons I'm still not too clear on. But knowing my daddy, it wasn't too favorable. His favorite cousin and running buddy, Roger Jr., was already living in Seattle and had an insatiable thirst for white women. So naturally, he was popping more white women than Orville Redenbacher popcorn. Needless to say, between the small time petty theft opportunities and the plentiful access to white women, Daddy was sprung on the hookup. I mean, what do you expect living in the majority of your life in Nashville, Tennessee? You eating your popcorn now, Keisha? Don't you dare eyeball that white woman, son. Now, I can't tell you where, when, or even how my parents met. Her name was Evelyn. All I can tell you is that Daddy had to conquer. Okay. All I can tell you is that Daddy had to conquer and possess that forbidden territory. He was such an angry black man. You know, hell, most of the young black men were angry back in the height of the civil rights movement. I got the impression from him that he ever really loved my mother. From what little bits and pieces I was able to pick up about her, I heard they were more like partners in crime. Thank you, Amir. And I mean literally all types of crime. Somewhere between the counterfeit payroll check and the forgeries, I happened. I'm sure that at some point he attempted to make his family situation jail. I can recall the story he often told me about when he worked on the Seattle Center grounds near the world famous Space Needle. At that time, it was the site of the 1962 World's Fair, and not too long after Elvis filmed one of his movies there on site. One night after the park closed, while cleaning the grounds, he stumbled across a bank bag that some negligent park employee, in his or her haste to go home for the evening, I suppose, had apparently dropped by mistake near one of the wishing fountains. He looked in the bag and discovered it was full of cash and checks. No doubt the day's profits of one of the many vendors on site, and did what broke folk in his position do, rather than turn it into the authorities. When he walked through the front door of the small studio apartment, my mother sat Indian style in the middle of the bed, around 8 months pregnant with me at the time. He opened the bag, dumped the money out in front of her, and she literally crossed her eyes and passed out. When she came to, they counted out about 3 grand in cash alone and destroyed the checks. This certainly wasn't chump change back in 1962, especially for a young black man. Apparently, the money covered the cost of my birth, which is pretty noble on his part. I say that only because somehow I can't help but to believe that, knowing my father and his intentions, if his intentions were anything other than half-ass loyal to the situation, he would have easily just taken the money and stashed it, leaving it up to her to have me at her own expense. When the news made its way to Nashville about this new family addition on the way, his parents decided to finally leave the South to join him there. They packed everything they owned and moved to Seattle to be part of this little one's life, settling into a downstairs portion of a duplex in the Central District, or what us natives of Seattle all refer to, even to this day, the CD. This is where all the black folks lived. Now, don't get it twisted. Mama didn't like my mother. Grandpa, on the other hand, loved that white woman to death. But then again, anyone who really knew my grandpa knew he loved all white women to death. As a goodwill gesture, Mama gave my mother a ring. Maybe she did it to convince herself that this woman would be a major element in the family structure. Or maybe she did it to fool my grandmother into thinking she accepted this woman. Hell if I know. Nevertheless, here she is, this white woman, carrying their hope for the future, their great white hope. This child, unlike their colored boy child, was going to reap the benefits of whatever this magnificent country had to offer. This child was their golden opportunity to get it right. After so many disappointments doled out by my father, ranging from not graduating from high school on time to a number of minor run-ins with the law to suddenly being discharged from the Army, they were more than ready to invest into a positive legacy. Grandpa wanted to name me Irene. It was rather apparent that his intent was to present me to society as white as possible, starting from the whitest name he could come up with. Daddy told me that they compromised with Michelle and nicknamed me Mickey. He would jokingly tell me out of earshot of my grandparents that he only called me Mickey because that's what he slipped my mother before she passed out and he took advantage of her. He did a ditty. That wasn't in the book. For years, I thought it was just some clever little anecdote he liked to tell me as a joke. But later, I would find that his truth was stranger than his fiction. Before I was even born, my grandparents meticulously mapped out their plans to participate in the raising of their first grandchild. Little did they know that they would end up having to do it all by themselves. Hell, they were both up in age. Mama was born in 1905. Grandpa was born in 1909. Here it is, 1962, and they're about to embark on unknown territory. They were going to raise this little blonde haired, blue eyed girl in a black urban environment during the most turbulent time of this country's recent history. The task presented itself rather quickly. My mother made it extremely easy for him. Simply put, one day went out and never came back. Daddy got a phone call from one of the neighbors in the apartment building that we lived in. Just after the job at the Seattle Center, he had lucked up on a better job with Bethlehem Steel, which wasn't an easy job for a black man to acquire back in those days. Now they were already looking at him sideways since this 6 foot tall pregnant white woman arrived to pick him up from work one evening. They didn't take too kindly to that, but now this nigger's getting phone calls too. Next thing you know, their kind will be sitting behind the boss's desk. Needless to say, he took great strides in being careful when it came down to his behavior on the job. However, this was unsettling news to say the least, and the only logical reaction was immediate action. He accepted the call. Mr. Jones, we found your daughter in your apartment all by herself. We don't know how long she's been there alone, but we saw her mother leave quite some time ago. You're going to have to come get her. How the hell would any man react? He certainly didn't want the authorities involved, especially the police. As for his employer, he could tell them the situation, but they certainly wouldn't care. Besides, he was a very private man, a very prideful man. He wasn't about to give that white man anything to talk about when he turned his back. They knew too much as it was. He gave his foreman an awkward look and abruptly left the job site. He knew that if he came back, he would only be told that his job had been terminated. So he spared them the effort. He never returned. That was stupid. Anyway, my mother didn't have any family to speak of. Her own mother disowned her and refused to speak to her, starting with the trouble involving the counterfeit payroll checks when her mother had to put her pride on the line and speak to the wealthy family she worked for in order to keep her daughter out of jail, to carrying this new bundle of racial confusion in her belly. She hasn't had anything to do with her. When the cops came by to question him about his involvement with the payroll checks, of course, Daddy denied knowing her. He left her dangling out there all by herself. I can just hear her mother now, all beet red in the face with the tone of "I told you so" ringing loud and clear. Now look at you. Didn't I tell you them jigaboos are no good? Now you're about to bring one of them mixed up nigger babies into this world. Needless to say, I never met that woman. And that's the last I will ever mention of her. Daddy did the only thing he thought he could do. He showed up to his parents' doorstep, with his 6-month-old daughter in his arms. What the hell am I supposed to do now? I'm sure that deep down inside he felt that this would work out to his benefit. It was no secret that his parents wanted to raise me, and he knew that if his parents took us both in, he could go on living his life without anything or anyone weighing him down. Most would say he had it pretty good, with free room and board and the ability to go and come as he pleased. He reaped the benefits that came along with fathering their little ray of hope. Hey, Ellen. Good, good. His nurturing at a distance and at his convenience made his presence extremely incidental. For somewhat different reasons, it was obvious that my mother shared the same sentiment. She was also able to go on about her business, never looking back. Looking would have possibly caused shame, and she had more than enough shame to bear with the estrangement from her family. My assumption of her became quite evident to me as I got older, when I discovered that she gave birth to a total of 6 children and gave them all away. In retrospect, where most would have been bitter, I felt grateful. I didn't quite appreciate it during my earlier years, but later I grew to realize that she actually did me a favor. Ha! That was chapter 1. That was chapter 1. Did you guys like that? I hope y'all liked it. I didn't really get to see anything in the chat because I was reading. Hey, Anthony, how are you, sweetheart? Good to see you. So what do you guys think? Do you want me to go on to the next chapter, or you want that for another night? You guys want to talk about something else? It's so good to see you, Anthony. It's good to see all of you. Ellen smiles in the house. I'm glad you did. Next chapter, Keisha? You guys want me to read the next chapter? Okay. For those who want me to read the next chapter, put a 1 in the chat. If I get 5 ones, I'll go ahead and proceed. If I get 5 ones in the chapter. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5. Wow. Okay. Chapter 2. The American Dream. Okay. Grandpa had a pretty hard life, as most black folk did in the early 1900s. He was born at Harlem Hospital in New York City. I know you know where that is, nephew. His parents were suddenly killed when he was only 5 years old, and as a result, he was raised in a Catholic orphanage. As a young man, and being predominantly black with a slice of Italian, he was what black folks would describe as a pretty nigga. With his coal black wavy hair and smooth caramel skin. He didn't look like your average black man, but average or not to society, he was still black. He relied on that very status of pretty nigga, using his God's given gift of gab and charisma not only to survive the streets of Harlem in its in its Renaissance heyday, but to achieve, or attain what he so desired in life, including women, many women. It wasn't uncommon for Grandpa to find himself jumping out of the second story window of some woman's bedroom whose husband may have come home early from work. I'd like to think that I got my personality from him, minus, of course, the hoism factor or the hoe chasing factor. By 1964, he was able to maneuver his way into an almost unattainable job at the University of Washington as an animal technician in animal research. He was the first black man at the university to become certified in this field. At one point, during his studies to acquire this certification, some of his co-workers actually petitioned the university to put an end to this travesty. Dr. Penfold, who was my grandfather's superior and head of animal research at that time, responded with a simple, "Go ahead. You see, not white folks are bad." With such a monumental milestone achieved, it provided what most would consider being the ultimate American dream. For the first time in his life, at the age of 55, he purchased a home. Not too shabby for a black man with an eighth grade education. Mama, on the other hand, was the exact opposite. She was the third of four children born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. She was very naive in her thinking most of the time and relied solely on her faith in the Lord. What we reading? This is my autobiography, Anthony. This is chapter 2. The name of the book is Who You Callin' a White Girl. It's in my playlist too, if you ever want to go there and look at it. Okay, I just lost my place. I would rather, I would later learn that she was what they called back in them days as kind of slow. No, sir, it's not on Amazon. Yeah, it's a long story, trust me. I'll explain it to you one day. The guy that published me kind of did me kind of wrong. You probably heard of him too. Her mother was a very stern mother, or woman, and rather stoic in stature. I remember one particular picture that stood out in my mind of her, a black Joan Crawford. She was a hairdresser by trade, and not very kind to my grandmother. In all actuality, she was the epitome of evil, and I would have to assume that her chronic alcoholism fueled her cruel treatment of her. So mean that when Mama was around 29 or 30 years old, her mother threw a quarter at her, told her to go find a life. Imagine that. But oh, in God's divine mercy and grace, grandfather to take care of her for the rest of her life. Now, her father, on the other hand, was a very handsome, debonair, and loving man. When she was a very little girl, he spent a lot of time on the road in pursuit of his dream to be a prominent black journalist. But when home with his family, he made it his business to give Mama just a little bit more special attention than the others. I suspect to make up for the harsh criticisms endured by her mother for being so dark and slow, as Mama told it. Her made it painfully obvious that she was by far a stark contrast from her high yellow little sister with the good hair and the ability to talk to folk. Maybe her sister's name should have been Shug. Her name should have been Celie, huh? Her daddy successfully pursued and later achieved a position as a journalist for the black section of the local newspaper, leaving less and less time spent with his family. Nevertheless, she was so proud of her father, often cried when speaking of him, because unlike her mother, she felt genuine love from him. According to Mama, He was a very kind hearted, loving young man. Ironically, it was that kindness and love of his fellow man that led him to his own demise. After caring for a very sick friend suffering from tuberculosis, he died after contracting that same disease at the age of 37, when he was just a very when she was just a very young girl, leaving her to deal with the wrath of the black mommy dearest. Despite all the tragedy of my grandparents' past, there was yet another chapter to be written to their legacy. Mama's job was to simply raise me. Grandpa went to work every single day of the week. He was blessed with a boss that allowed him to work all the overtime he wanted. Because he never owned a car, he caught a taxi to work every morning. Up at 5 o'clock, start work at 6 o'clock, come home by 4 o'clock just like clockwork. Mama would entertain herself with thrift store shopping downtown at the Pioneer Market or the Salvation Army in Pioneer Square. It seemed like every morning at the crack of damn dawn, she was packing me off to the bus stop for that uncomfortably crowded bus ride with the other rush hour commuters to downtown Seattle. On few occasions, if the weather was decent, we would bypass the bus altogether and just walk. Hi, bestie. Just save a few cents. Enough to buy an extra article of clothing, no doubt. Once at the market, we would then make our way down the dark walkway which led to the entrance of the St. Vincent de Paul store and patiently waited at the gate with the early shoppers in anticipation of a deal. As time neared for the shop to open, I could feel the pressure of the adult crowd bearing down closer and closer to my little frame like a slow simmer. The low drone of the pulleys would begin to slowly crank the gate open, turning up the heat yet another notch or two, as enticement for the crowd to draw even closer. And then finally the boil. Once the gate was just high enough, the early birds would then dart under the gate and run free to catch their proverbial worms. I was damn near trampled on more than one occasion by overzealous shoppers. But thanks to Mama and her defensive hip check, I was spared. Once inside, this is where I did my major exploring. The other shoppers would look at Mama with disgust as she wandered around the store calling my name because I would wander off and swing on the racks like monkey bars. Hi, out of the world. How are you, sweetheart? We would then leave the thrift shop and make our way up to the big Woolworth store. Mama would drift toward the familiar smell of roasted nuts and hot buttered popcorn that emitted from the candy counter in order to purchase her customary pound of freshly roasted and lightly salted cashews. A much more a much more pleasant experience than the smell of mildew and mothballs the thrift store had to offer. She was addicted to both. On a good day, we would sit at the Woolworths counter for lunch. And I failed to understand the importance of that counter and what it represented to her. I would later come to learn about those black students that conducted sit-ins at various Woolworth counters in the South. In 1960, four black freshmen at the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College walked into a Woolworths, purchased some school supplies, and then sat down at the counter. They knew they wouldn't be served because the counter was segregated. This act inspired a movement among black students in 11 different cities to conduct sit-ins at Woolworths or Crest stores. One of those historic sit-ins was conducted in Nashville, Tennessee, the very place she'd just left behind for Seattle. This was an instrumental part of history in the civil rights movement, and here we sit eating lunch, just me and Mama. Being the religious one in the family, Mama sought out and found a small church in the neighborhood to attend. Although she was raised a Baptist, this church was Church of God in Christ, or Kojic to be short. They were a little less reserved as the Baptist churches in the Seattle area and more like the Southern Baptist churches she was accustomed to attending in Nashville. This would be our church home, the springboard for my spiritual foundation. And I must say, we were certainly in for a ride. I remember the sisters of the church with their big hats, high heels, and beautiful dresses, speaking in tongues, singing, and shouting unto the Lord, but never neglecting to reprimand the young people of any behavior that was out of order. The pastor of the church was an extremely educated, highly intelligent, eloquent, yet foreboding man. As a child, I was scared to death of him. Back in those days, it wasn't uncommon for someone other than your mother or father to whoop you when you got out of line. And needless to say, I got more than my share of those whoopings. Okay, Anthony. Great. When I became of age to start preschool, my grandparents found it beneficial to my educational start to enroll me in the church's private school. The pastor's wife would pick me up early in the morning, and Mama would walk to the school in the afternoon to pick me up. All I remember in between was the butt whoopings. I lost my homework, whooping. Didn't I tell you not to run on the playground? Whooping. If I didn't learn anything else, I learned that I dreaded going to school because of the butt whoopings. Hello, DJ Ray. DJ Real. DJ Ray. I named you a comedian. One day, as the pastor class, he began passing out the previous day's homework. The classroom was a fairly small one, with about 10 children of various ages ranging from 5 to 8 years old in attendance. Okay, DJ, that's much easier. I noticed that, once again, the other children received a piece of caramel candy taped to their most recent graded assignment. And once again, I didn't. Because of my distinct fear of him, it took a considerable amount of courage on my part to summon up the courage to ask him why I didn't get a piece of candy on my paper. His hateful reply cut through me like a knife when he replied, "Because you're dumb." His demeanor was typical in that he was an extremely cocky and arrogant man. However, the words were more hurtful than anything I had ever experienced at the young age of 5. And this had nothing to do with my skin color. Regardless of the fact that I was the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl in the school. I held back my tears as best as I could until it made me sick to the stomach. As Mama and I walked home that day, she asked me about my day, as she typically did every day. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I began to cry uncontrollably and managed to tell her about the incident between sobs. Suddenly, her pleasant smile and demeanor turned to stone, and she became awkwardly quiet. It wasn't until that moment that I realized that this incident was of a greater magnitude than a child could ever imagine. Because up to that point, my early experience taught me that children weren't taken as seriously as adults. But if an adult took a serious situation serious, then so be it. It is what it is. All of those sayings we grew up with, such as children are to be seen and not heard, or staying in a child's place, suddenly flew right out the window. I was heard, and I was taken seriously at that moment in my early life, and I felt genuinely validated. We arrived home, where she made an honest effort to appear as normal as possible, going about her routine, but obviously shaken from what I had just told her. In her almost trance-like state, she turned on the television and changed the channel to where I would watch Wonder Wonder, and afterwards she would put me down for my daily nap. When I woke up a few hours later, Grandpa called me over to him as he ate his dinner from the TV tray in the living room. Both Daddy and Grandpa had their differences of opinion on many matters, ranging from how to treat women to how to cope with racism. But when it came to the pastor, they shared an extremely strong sentiment of distrust and resentment for this man. Whenever Daddy would see the pastor's picture in the newspaper, which was one of the two local black newspapers of our community, he would grimace and remark, "That nigga looks like the devil himself." I always thought it was because he didn't smile in the picture, but they sensed something deeper than an unflattering photograph. For amusement, Grandpa would tease Mama, asking her how much money did the church raise for the pimp that day. "Oh no, I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just reading, okay?" He knew he would get a rise out of her. She was so loyal. "Oh, but give it time, woman," he would say. "You'll see." Grandpa only allowed Mama to place me in the church Bible Academy because she wouldn't let up on the issue, persuading him that I could ultimately benefit being educated there by this highly educated man. Of course, there was the minor detail of $100 a month that she failed to disclose until the last minute. Yet he conceded to give the school a try. I mean, how much harm could it be? Daddy emerged from the kitchen just in time to participate in the questioning. They proceeded to question me about the incident, and I told them exactly what I told Mama. An eerie silence moved through the room that seemed to overtake even the sound of the television. As I stood there contemplating how to somehow break this uncomfortable silence, a sudden endless tirade of motherfuckers, dirty bastards, and sons of bitches ensued. As I watched Grandpa pace back and forth in that living room, it almost seemed as though he had briefly taken on a new identity. Daddy chimed in with his own barrage of profanities, taking it up a notch with threats of physical acts of violence. Although I had witnessed Grandpa become pretty mad to the point of cursing in the past, this time was like no other. They were so consumed in their anger that they forgot to have me leave the room before the grown-up discussions began. He never spoke of violence in terms of being the perpetrator, yet on this day, the day that man insulted me, if given the opportunity at that precise moment, murder, I'm sorry I said that, was a conceivable act more than a notion. And it didn't matter how much that so-called man of God toted that Bible around, preached of hellfire and brimstone, or walked the pews on Sunday morning. As the conversation between the men quieted to a low simmer, Mama sat off to the side in silence, and yet in absolute resolve. And as the evening progressed, so did the calm. First thing the next morning, I was taken to the nearest public school, where Mama enrolled me, and I began my first day of real kindergarten. Even though I no longer attended the church's school, we continued to attend church services. I loved going to church. It was always so exciting. There was always singing, shouting, and loud preaching. The pastor would literally walk the pews as he hooped and hollered. "Amen, pastor, preach the word." At this point, it would be the height of the service, and like clockwork, this is where Sister So-and-so would break out and start shouting in the corner, while the organist would kick in with the musical accompaniment. If I was quick enough, I could get to the tambourine before someone else and start beating that thing into submission. Another sister would jump up and start shouting, while another would start speaking in tongues. One of the deacons would jump up and start shouting as well, and the ushers would grab the sheets, standing around the shouting women in case one of them fell out. They had to throw those sheets over them so the rest of the congregation wouldn't see all their business. Surrounded by all the excitement, it was surprisingly easy to sometimes forget about the aroma of that fresh catfish frying in the kitchen downstairs, prepared by the skillful hands of the women's. Of course, nobody on earth could fry that fish as soulful as those dedicated Southern sisters, and it was on those evenings where the service wasn't quite so high that it sometimes proved to be difficult to concentrate on anything but that wonderful aroma. After church, they would sell fish sandwiches to raise funds so they could attend the big convocation in Memphis each year. Mother Jones. I'm thinking of that video. The Spirit of the Lord is all over this building, I heard the pastor say. You knew who was sincere and who was just trying to be seen. I learned early in the spiritual experience that the Spirit won't hurt you. In other words, if one of those sisters was shouting, especially in those pointed toe high heel shoes, and somehow hurt herself, well, she was faking. It was amazing to see these women kick up their heels and never so much as break a nail. Once, while attending a big church function at another church, can I purchase a copy? I love a good read. I'm sorry, sweetheart, this is my only copy, but you can always go to my playlist. The whole thing is right there in my playlist. I'm completely out of. Once, while attending a big church function at another church, some women started shouting, and somehow, in the height of the spirit, she sprained her ankle. To add insult to injury, the preacher very candidly put her on Front Street before the whole congregation with a brief yet stern scolding. Now you know the Lord ain't in that, he stressed. Thank you, nephew. Once he was done with her, she was so embarrassed that she ducked out of there before the benediction and never returned. At least not to that church. I'd see her a few times later at other churches in our circle, and you can best believe she was on her best behavior those times. I was pretty young when I started singing in the choir, so young that I couldn't tell how old I was. What was I thinking when I wrote that, okay? I loved singing and discovered at a young age that I had a pretty decent voice. I couldn't belt out those old gospel hymns as boisterous as those women that I looked up to, but I often envisioned myself being like them one day. Mama, on the other hand, couldn't hold a tune in a bucket, bless her heart. Grandpa often poked fun at her, saying, Your mama sings so bad she got kicked out of the choirs. Even Mama had to laugh each and every time he brought it up, especially since it was actually true. Although in those early years they never came out with actually verbalizing it, I sensed somehow I was different from the other kids in my small little world. I didn't attribute it to my skin color, though. Even in church, members of the congregation usually treated me just like the other kids. The highlight of some Sundays was the rare occasion when Mama would let me go to one of my church friends' house after church and play, since we had to return for night service. Back in those days, as well as in some circles today, the average black Pentecostal, Kojic, or Baptist church would conduct church services all day long. First it was Sunday school, then it was 11 o'clock service. Church would then conclude around 2 p.m. Sometimes we had to go visit another church for an afternoon service, a church anniversary, or an usher's day. Then we returned to YPWW, Young People Willing Workers, service that night at 7 p.m. Phew, Jesus, not to mention Wednesday and Friday night service. Can I get some playtime, please? My favorite time was when we went to other churches where other churches together to fellowship. This was my opportunity to get away from sitting next to Mama and sitting up in the balcony with the other kids. If I wasn't sitting by Mama, she couldn't pop me upside the head. Hi, Bendall. Wait a minute. If I wasn't sitting by Mama, she couldn't pop me upside the head when I got too antsy, trying to play off, of course, as if she was shouting in the spirit. Now, you know the Lord ain't in that either. I would often catch her looking around to see if she could me up there with the rest of the kids. Hell, it shouldn't have been too hard. I stood out like a sore thumb. Didn't she trust me? What did she have to worry? It later became apparent to me that this was all part of the intent to shield me from the influences of blackness. Boy, did it backfire. I only had two real friends in church around my age, and even then I picked up a sense of pity from the grown folks. I figured it had something to do with Mama. She was somewhat older than the other members. As a matter of fact, she was referred to as Mother Jones, a term of endearment and respect as the mother of the church because she was the oldest member. Thank you, Bendall. In the Kojic and Pentecostal church, there was a portion of the service dedicated to testimony service. Testimony service gave each member the opportunity to stand and tell the congregation how good the Lord had blessed them that week. Someone started out with a song sung in and Pentecostal churches to this day. I'm so glad that the Lord saved me. I'm so glad that the Lord saved me. If it had not been for Jesus, where would I be? I'm so glad that the Lord saved me. This was followed with I thank the Lord for being saved, sanctified, and filled with the precious Host with a mighty burning fire. Although the intent of testimony service was to lift the glory and honor of God, many who testified or testified would go on and on about bad news, bad situations, and bad relationships and lack of money. A lot of those testimonies were verbal pity parties. That those that heard might feel bad enough for them to bring them down a few dollars, kick them down a few dollars. I always got a kick out of this portion of the service. However, I sometimes sensed an air of tolerance from the other sisters of the church when Mama would get up and give her testimony because she never spoke negatively about her spiritual walk or her personal business. Bent, are you a mess? Instead, she always spoke of how good the Lord had been to her because God blessed her with a husband that worked, cooked, cleaned, paid the bills, did shopping, the laundry, and washed the dishes, while her only duty was to make his coffee in the morning before work and raise me. Over time, they stopped calling on her to give her testimony. Thank you, Bendall. It never dawned on me that my sense of exclusion was a direct result of how Mama treated me. She tended to usually smother and shelter me in such a way that sometimes infuriated me and sometimes made others in our presence feel rather slighted. She would take meticulous care to make sure my hair was combed in such a way that I looked just like the little white girls in the commercials on TV. It was a wonderful change of environment going home with my church friends because they had big families with lots of siblings, lots of interaction, and the chance to blend into the scene. At home, it was just me and the TV. The early TV sitcoms were my entertainment when I wasn't listening to the radio, dancing and singing to the latest R&B hits. Soul Train was my dance teacher. It was common to find me in my room standing in front of the mirror with a hairbrush, stick, spoon, or whatever I could find to serve as my microphone, mimicking all the old Motown sounds. Michael Jackson was my boyfriend, and you couldn't tell me any different. Simply put, I was determined to represent myself as black as possible. I mean, that's all I knew. There was no white in my world. I convinced myself that black was a state of mind, and it further comforted me to know that, at least according to what society stipulated, as long as you had one drop of black blood in you, you were black. Regardless of how I looked, I was black. End of story. At home, playtime was all indoors. If I went outside, I couldn't go beyond the front porch. We never had visitors like other families would have, and I began to feel isolated from the rest of the world. Thank you, Anthony. As outgoing as my grandfather was, even he didn't invite people over, other than one or two of his co-workers, and that was pretty seldom. He did all of his partying outside of the home. I often heard Grandpa refer to the American dream, yet I had my own dream, and that was to play with the other kids in my neighborhood. Let the rebellion begin. Okay, that was chapter 2. We will do chapter 3 later. I hope you guys enjoyed it. My voice is starting to go. But that's just the first 2 chapters. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Reading can take a lot out of me over time, so that's why I have the playlist. I hope I didn't put y'all to sleep. Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Now, is there anything that anybody here wants to talk about? Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, Ellen. You guys are wide awake. Well, tell me what y'all want to talk about. We can talk about anything under the sun. Something that we can all participate in. You could talk about your latest video. Oh, the woman. The woman that went to Pakistan. That one. Oh, there's too much peppermint in that thing. Well, I dropped a video earlier today. I have to go to bed. Are you going to read again tonight or another night? I'm not going to read any more tonight, Ellen, but I'm sure I'll read again another night if you'd like. I was going to talk about something else that I picked up earlier. I'm glad you did, Ellen. I'm glad you did. We were going to talk about the woman from America that went over to Pakistan to marry a 19-year-old young man. And of course, rejected. She was rejected by his family, so he wouldn't marry her. And she's in her 30s. She's from New York. She's a bit different. So she's refusing to leave Pakistan. She's telling the Pakistani people, I'm not leaving, and you're going to pay me $2,000 a week. Then she went up. I think at some point in time it became 50K. And she swears that she's going to marry this man, whom is 19 years old and is forbidden to marry her from, by his family. So this video that I put up was showing some of the antics that I mean, they're literally, I can't believe they're following this woman around and celebrating her in Pakistan. These people, I don't know. There's men over there. I'm sorry I interrupted. Have a good night. You're not interrupting, sweetheart. Exactly, Ellen. I'm flabbergasted that she's got such arrogance. I mean, you should see how she talks to these people. Tells them it's none of your business. They've got microphones in her face and she's, just acting a fool. Very arrogant. And I want to smack her upside the head and say, Heifer, do you realize you are in another country and you're a woman? You don't get to talk to people like that. But, she got that New York state of mind. But she better bring that mind back to New York where it works. Because Pakistan, they'll line you up against that wall. Piss the wrong people off. Okay, Amy? Piss the wrong people off. Put you in front of that firing squad. How you gonna help Pakistan now? But she claims that she's gonna stay there and make Pakistan a better place to live. And she's refusing to leave. And insisting they pay her. But then I thought about it. Isn't that what we kind of deal with here in this country too? From other people that come over and want us to pay for them to be here, and we're supposed to just take it. And I'm not talking about people that come over here legally. I'm talking about the illegal ones that come over, and it doesn't matter from where they come from. If you're illegal, you're illegal. Exactly. Man, but they haven't put this woman in jail over there in Pakistan. They're celebrating her almost. She's the latest story. All the news conglomerates there are following around, and all these men now want to marry her. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, you do you, boo. Exactly what type of power she has. She's very intimidating to them. They're not used to women standing up like that. I'll see you later, Ellen. So glad you came by. Yeah, it amazes me. Her attitude, she'll say something and says good night or goodbye. Cuts them off just like that. Appreciate you too, Ellen. Definitely. I'm working on the next trivia game, by the way, you guys. That's going to be on Friday night. Just giving you a heads up. I'm working on my trivia questions for Friday night. So come prepared. I think it worked out really well when I had everybody to refresh their devices all at the same time. What do you think? Do you think that worked out good, despite if they were computers or iPhones or iPads? Because we didn't run into any problems, toward the end of the game. I think that's what everybody should do. Is when we do those trivia games, no matter what device you're on, refresh. Yeah, I thought it turned out good. So are you guys going to go defend the house again tonight? It's crazy. Oh my goodness. I can't believe this. Do they do that in all those games? They sound like it. They sound like that's crazy as all. That's crazy as a Betsy bug. I'll probably jump in there when I'm done with this live. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Because we got protecting the house because people coming inside and they're throwing bombs. Yeah, there should be some kind of community restrictions, community guidelines in the Roblox games that would prevent people from behaving in such a manner. I mean, come on. I know they're kids, but this is why these kids are so out of control today. Because they're allowed to act any old kind of way in these games. I just got to master that game. There's certain things I don't know how to do. Like take, unless you see the button that says take and press it. Other than that, if you want to hand me the baby, I don't know how to take the baby from you. It's weird. No, it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy at all. Here we go. Come on. Come on. Now my iPad want to trip. It started spooling. It said reconnect. Well, we got 23 likes and 21 in the chat. You saw that too? That was weird. My iPad is not overheated, so I don't understand why it did that. I turned off all my other devices so they could charge up. Abdul, are you going on live after me in your game? Okay. I'll come in there and play while you're live. The family able to play, they don't know how. But they'll root us along. Yes, sir. They'll root us along. So Sam must have left. I sure do miss DeAndre. I haven't seen DeAndre in a while. Well, it looks like this it 90 minutes. That's an hour and a half. What y'all think? You want me to end it now and you go ahead and start your live now, sweetie? Okay. Well, I can finish up. It doesn't have to go for the whole 2 hours. I mean, I'd rather finish up if you guys are doing the game now and there's nobody else in the chat that's talking. I'd rather just end it and let you take over from here. I don't want to just sit here in the camera. I really don't. I can't do that. in anticipation of somebody coming in, you know. So, um, half, you know what I mean? I can cut it short and you can take an extra 30 minutes with you, you know. Okay? Oh no, sweetie, don't be sorry. You guys go ahead, play the game. I'm gonna end my live and I'll join you. Okay? Just give me a few minutes of transition and I'll jump over there and play with y'all because I don't think there's anybody else in here beside us, the family. Okay? So I'll just come over there. All right? I love you guys and anybody else that might be here. Um, love you. And I'll be back again soon. Y'all say y'all stay cool now. Oh, I almost said something else, but I don't even remember what I was gonna say. Anyway, I love y'all and I'll see you in a minute. Take it easy.